welcome to a brand new video. Today we will be reviewing a new Aeon essay called The Glimpse of the World's Heart. I wanted to visit Colombia's sacred mountains, but there are some places we cannot go and some things we cannot know. Okay, let's go to the Aeon essay. Just wait a minute. Yeah. I am standing on the beach at Santa Marta, a small port city on Colombia's humid Caribbean coast. Okay, so the author is giving a brief description about the place where he is in right now. Around me, brightly dressed families are eating ice cream and grilled meat. Venezuelan refugees are begging for coins, and shredded plastic bags are snagged or entangled in the cactuses. Okay, offshore cargo vessels idle on the blue-gray waves, perhaps heading east towards the Atlantic or west to Panama or the Pacific and the Pacific. Sorry, the industrial port bristles with cranes and gantries. Okay, I don't know what that is. Looking inland, my view is curtailed. Curtailed refers to the obstruction. The author's view is being obstructed by palm trees and crumbling apartment blocks. Okay, but somewhere beyond the urban sprawl, densely forested foothills rise towards the summits of a mountain range called the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. Okay, it's quite a long name. So, first of all, the author is giving a brief description about the place where he is in right now, and then he is saying that there are few things here and there, how the people are dressed, etc., etc. And he is also referring to a densely forested foothill, a mountain range maybe called the Sierra Nevada, blah blah blah. This is the reason I am here. Okay, so the author is because of this foothill, not this foothill, this mountain range, not all the things which he is looking around at. I am not the first foreigner to have stood on this coast and imagined the forest and misty highlands that lie beyond. Okay, so the author is not the first one who is looking at the mountain ranges and the people around there, and he is thinking that he is the only one, but it's not like that. Near me, on the seafront, is the statue of Rodrigo de Bastidas. Okay, so there's a man or a woman who has visited this area before. The Spanish explorer who founded this city in 1525, laying quite understandable, laying claim to the ancestral lands of the indigenous people who lived there. Indigenous mean the people who already lived here, just like what the North Sentinelist people in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Yeah. So that's one of the examples which I am giving. In the centuries since the arrival of the Bastidas, Santa Marta has been the starting point of explorers, conquist the colonizers, basically, I think so. Farmers, miners, loggers, narco traffickers, and more recently tourists. So it has been trafficked by a lot of people, different kind of people, basically. In their various ways, all have gazed towards the hinterland. Hinterland refers to an utopian land maybe, and seen the gleam of treasure. Okay, so they felt that there is some treasure lying behind the densely populated trees. Okay, even before my journey starts, I wondered if my presence here is also part of that extractive questing lineage. Okay, I'm a travel writer. I have come looking for treasure too. Okay, so gist of the paragraph would be the author does not think he's the only one. There are people who have visited this place before, and with the idea of acquiring a treasure, not the treasure which we usually talk about, but the treasure of the mother nature itself. So yeah, he's also because of that. I have come to Santa Marta in search of a way into those mountains. Okay, the author is wondering about these mountains to learn about a culture that has remained uncolonized. So these mountains have remained uncolonized throughout the lifetime. Maybe I have come to encounter the sacred landscape that culture has been protecting. Okay, so the author is wondering about that place only. At least as I sweat here on this beach, that's what I think I have come here for. In the end, this story isn't about that journey at all. So the author is not concerned, is telling us not to be concerned about the story of his journey. Rather, he is trying to focus on the place where he is trying to go. The city that De Bastidas founded was one of the first Spanish settlements in what would later be named as Colombia. So the previous history of Colombia, and the second oldest Spanish city in South America. Okay, so this place probably is the second oldest Spanish city in South America. Spanish city means the Spanish speaking city or Latino. It marks a cultural ground zero. This is where the meteor hit. So probably the author is talking about the meteorite or the asteroid collision with Earth, which probably affected the extinction of dinosaurs from Earth. Okay, you can still feel its impact. Okay, so the author can still feel the asteroid collision in some way. From this point, the European invasion rolled across the continent, collapsing civilizations as it went and okay, dragging silver and gold from the rubble, a pressure wave of devastation that reached almost everywhere. So the author is talking about the colonization. He is basically frowning upon the fact that people have colonized these all places, and except the mountain range which he was talking about earlier in the passage. Everywhere but the Sierra, see, everywhere but the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, the mountain range which we previously talked about. At first, the Tairona of the coast, Tairona probably refers to the indigenous people of the place, resisted the seizure of their lands. Yeah, probably. With a major uprising taking place in 1599, but by the mid 17th century, they had been overwhelmed. Okay, so they have been surprised by more colonizers probably. In the face of slavery, genocidal violence, disease, the survivors of the invasion fled to the mountain settlements protected by the dense tropical jungle and precipitous terrain. Okay, precipitous terrain probably means the terrain which is uh, frequently encountered by rainfall. The Spanish saw no need to pursue them as riches could be found more easily elsewhere. So, some of the people of the indigenous tribe fled away to the mountains, and the colonizer didn't take much interest in those people. They were more interested in making money, probably, which was not present in those mountains. The value was not present in those mountains. Stripped of its coastal territories, the indigenous civilization collapsed, but in the fastness of the mountains, descendants of the Tairona survived. So, the Tairona tribe eventually survived the colonization. Over the centuries, those descendants separated into four tribes: the Viva, the Kanguama, the Arhuaco, some name. Each found their niches in the range, living at different altitudes with varying degrees of acculturation, whatever it may be, to the settlers around them. So the tribe was divided into four groups, three of them being the Viva, Kangwama, and the other one. They lived at different altitudes and they had probably different cultures as well. The Kogi, meanwhile, so this is the fourth tribe which the author is talking about. Meanwhile, living nearest to the tops of the mountain, so they lived at the top, the Kogi, and the other three lived below them probably. The Kogi, meanwhile, living nearest to the tops of the mountains, cut themselves off from the world below and maintained almost a total isolation. So the Kogi lived at the top of the mountain and they were not interconnected with the other tribes or the outer world. Incredibly, that isolation endures today. So that still remains today. That isolation from the other tribes or the other people are still present right now also. An uncolonized indigenous culture that has thrived less than 50 kilometers from the South America's first colonial Spanish settlements, literally within the invader side. So they lived at the in the invader site, and they were not colonized. That's what the author is trying to say. For all that time, two separate worlds have existed side by side. One may be the world of the Kogi and the not the world of the Kogi. These two worlds basically. On maps, the mountains bear their Spanish name, Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, but in the language of the Kogi, they are called Gonawindua, some name. They are also known to the indigenous people who lived there as El Corazon del Mundo, which refers to the heart of the world. Okay, so the local people or the indigenous people call that place the heart of the world. Rising like a pyramid to the height of more than 5,700 meters, the heart of the world is the tallest coastal mountain range on the earth. It stretches 160 kilometers across the north of Colombia with the foothills that touch the Caribbean Sea and peaks crowned year round with snow. Okay, so the author is basically describing the visual aesthetics of the mountain. um, Between those two extremes exist vastly different ecosystems ranging from glaciers and misty highlands. So, the author is talking about the ecological diversity here. It is one of the most biodiverse places on the planet and a UNESCO biosphere reserve. So, probably that's an honor given by the UNESCO, and that place received it. Okay, so because of its extreme elevation and changes in topography, the range is haven or a home to more than 600 species of birds, including 36 found in nowhere else, and 189 species of mammals. So these are also the descriptions. In 2013, the International Union for Conservation of Nature named the Sierra Nevada or the mountain range the most irreplaceable site in the world for endangered species. So they basically honored the place that no other mountain range can replace the home for this endangered species. So many endangered species live there and there only. The mountains are geographically and ecologically important, but for the Kogi, the heart of the world must also be understood cosmologically or universally. According to their traditions, this is where all life began. So, according to the Kogi or the indigenous people who lived at the top of the mountain, they felt that their life their ancestors' life began there only. They regard themselves as the elder brothers, so they called themselves as the elder brothers, protecting the heart's vitality and by tending its sacred sites with rituals, prayers, and offering to maintain the wider ecological and spiritual balance of the planet. So, the elder brothers, what the indigenous people call themselves, they protected the habitat of themselves. Okay, this balance is threatened by the actions of the younger brothers. The name that Kogi and others in the Sierra call us. Okay, the foreigners who invaded the land. So there's a narrative among the indigenous people that they are the good people and we are abysmal. Given that's with most of the people, I think so. Okay. Uh, it paints us not as a monstrous or malevolent, but as toddlers wreaking unfathomable destruction, unable to comprehend the consequences of what we do, poisoning rivers, burning down forests, pillaging precious metal and coal. They do not basically treat us like we are abysmal, which I previously talked about, but they personally think that we are like toddlers. We are very naive to roam this planet. For centuries, we are basically destroying the planet without knowing about it. The Kogi have gazed at their violent siblings below with a mixture of alarm, bewilderment, and dismay. Okay. Like many people, I first encountered the Kogi in a documentary. In the late 1980s, the tribal priest or the Mamos made the difficult decision to end their centuries of isolation. So, for centuries, they have been isolated at the top of the hills, but right now, the tribal priests are trying to connect with the outer world as well. The only thing that had saved their culture from destruction. So the author is saying that the isolation was the only cause of them not being destroyed or the culture not being destroyed, and invited a journalist into the Sierra. Okay, so some priests invited a journalist to the Sierra. Alan Herrera, some name. So a British filmmaker. So this filmmaker, the priest invited this filmmaker, collaborated with the tribe over the next 2 decades to produce From the Heart of the World. So these are the two films which this man or woman, I don't know, produced, and Aluna. In this documentaries, the Kogi delivered a message to the younger brothers, warning us in simple terms what our plundering ways we are leading to. Okay, the sacred rivers were drying up, the glaciers were melting on the peaks, the heart of the world was growing sick, perhaps it was even dying. Okay, so the Kogi was afraid, and they wanted to share to the outer world that they are in danger, or mm, probably the world is in danger, because they believe that they it was means their place was the origination of every life form according to them, they and their ancestors. So they felt the fear within them, and they tried to communicate with the outer world. So it's like a elder brother and younger brother thing, that the elder brother knows everything, and they try to educate the younger brothers about the things which he needs to do. Okay. In Herrera's book, The Heart of the World, he describes how his first experience with the Kogi ended. After work on the documentary was finished, the camera crew crossed a small bridge and said, probably, the mammoths symbolically closed the bridge behind us. The younger brother should not return, we were told. The message had been given, no one else should come. Only I was to come back with the finished film, so that they could see that I had done what I had promised. Okay, so after the invitation, the man or the woman, let's say the British filmmaker, went away from that place, and the Kogi closed the doors behind them, the symbolical door, that no one can reach them in the future except that person itself. Okay. Herrera did what he promised. Okay, he was a man, but ecological breakdown has only accelerated in the years since. The warning in the elder brother's eyes has been ignored. Okay, so the warning which the elder brother gave us was being ignored by us. The films have a complex legacy. They have made the Kogi iconic among ecologically minded Westerners, and though increased visibility and international profile have given a tribe a measure of unofficial protection against the further encroachment from those who might seek the heart's resources. Okay, let's sit down and think about it. So, the Kogi was being noticed by the Western activists, ecological activists, and they received an unofficial protection against us, or the people who tried to invade or exploit their resources, or the heart's resources. The Colombian government, mindful of its image, now has more stake in their survival. Okay, so the government is also endorsing their survival, and they are also respecting their isolation. Okay, but inevitably this newfound fame has attracted tourists as well as anthropologists and spiritual seekers of all kinds who venture to the mountains in the hope of meeting an untouched indigenous culture and being enlightened by the wisdom, or at least taking some photographs. Of course, this threatens the very isolation on which the Kogi have depended upon. So, this attention which the Kogi was receiving, this unofficial protection, this endorsement, this support from the government, this has led the Kogi to be under the light of human attention as well, the normal human attention. And people, among those humans, there are also people who are tourists, who are spiritual seekers, who also wanted to visit them for maybe wisdom and enlightenment, and also taking some photographs with them. This is not a travel story, or rather it's a different type of travel story. Okay, as a travel writer, I have long been fascinated by the stories of the heart of the world. So the author read about this place, and he was being fascinated by it. But I know this fascination presents a deep dilemma. So he thinks that there is a problem with it. The prohibition against outsider visiting the could not be clearer. Okay, so he thinks that if he tried to visit the place, he would be violating the isolation of the Kogi tribe. This is spelled out by one of the memos in the Herrera's first documentary, that filmmaker rather. We want younger brother to know that he cannot come here again, and he cannot come back. We are putting a barrier so that he respects us. Okay, so it's quite understandable. The Kogi do not want the younger brother to invade their area. Understand, we don't want him coming up here and interfering with us. He disturbed us too much. So the Kogi is not very happy with us, and their brother does not want us to visit there again. But as it turns out, the mammoths did not close the barrier completely. So they did not close or shut the door on our face completely. Since Edera first visited in the late 1980s, a small number of outsiders have been admitted to the Sierra as guests rather than gate crashers. Okay, so they were treated very what like guests, not like people who they hated. So okay, we understood this. Academics, linguistic, and ecologists mm, uh, whose motives or the who motives the tribes can trust. Okay, so the tribes can trust the professors, maybe the ecologists, or who care about the environment, probably. Official permission must be gained through the Gonavinjua, some OGT. Okay, which acts as the representative body of the indigenous government. Okay, its offices are in Casa Indigena, Indigenous House in a suburb of Santa Marta. Okay, that is why I am here to. So the author is here to ask permission from the OGT whether he can go and visit the place. To encounter that sacred landscape for myself, to tell a story about a different way of being in the world. Okay, it's quite understandable. But the story I end up telling will be different. I did not get to the heart of the world. I did not climb the mountain. I did not hack my way through the impenetrable jungle with a machete or a hike up steel hydra, whatever it may be, to reach its unspoiled villages or to blah blah blah. Okay, this is not a travel story, or rather, it's a different type of travel story. So the author is not means interested about talking himself going there or the journey or the nature. He's more focused on the people and the culture which they share or the indigenous tribe share. Okay, rather than being about my journey, yeah, it's about the sacred landscape expanding beyond me. Okay, understood. Now, the Casa Indigena is situated in a district called Los Naranjos, the oranges, but there are no oranges trees to be seen ironically. My motor taxi drops me off in the front compound with high walls standing outside a group of men, blah blah blah. The men wear loose cotton dresses, all have woven bags made of cactus fiber, etc. etc. He's one of the men wears a conical white hat like a helmet. He's a Mamo, a Kogi priest. So the Kogi live there. Some of the Kogi live there. His hat represents the snow-capped peaks of the Sierra. So there's a symbolical hat with the priest is wearing. Inside the compound, I sit across from the OGT spokesman, Jose Manuel, a softly spoken man, also dressed in white cotton with two white bags around his chest. Fluent in Spanish and well traveled, he is an ambassador, an intermediary between the spheres of elder and younger brother. So he is a translator between those two words, or you can say the one who is between the younger and the older brother. He begins by explaining why his people first chose to make contact. Okay, so he tries to give explanation about why the Kogi wanted to interact with us for the first time. By the 1960s, the long delayed tide of colonization was finally lapping at the foothills of Sierra. Colombian farmers had flocked to the region, burning back forests to create grazing land. Once the soil was depleted, many of them turned to more lucrative cash crops, marijuana, and later cocaine. Okay, so Colombia is known for these drugs and narcotics. Quite a stereotype thought. Okay, leave it aside. And right-wing paramilitaries, both of whom had established. So there was war and there was also destruction in the hills, which the tribe did not like. So they were afraid of that, and they tried to interact or communicate with us, or tried to seek help and or teach us. Maybe these are all the things which I am speculating. I do not know. As the younger brothers spread further and further up the mountain, so they were extending their destruction, uh, and they were going beyond the limits, burning things and fighting with each other. The Kogi saw their continued isolation was threatened as never before. Maltreatment, murder, enslavement, sexual violence, dispossession, banishment, etc. These are Jose Manuel's words for the tribe. The Jose Manuel is the man who is between the intermediary, basically. Without some form of representation, his people would have no voice with which to advocate for their rights and legal protection. The Kogi were in danger of disappearing. So the Kogi were afraid that they would disappear and the world would also finish um, behind them. The first step was to learn the language of the invaders. The neighboring Viva spoke Spanish, so they already had a foot in both worlds. Now some Kogi stepped across the linguistic divide. Early contact was fraught with difficulty, not least among the Kogi themselves, as different communities scattered across a wide area of mountains and terrain, and now presented with the challenge of speaking in a united voice. The OGT was founded in 1987 as the mouthpiece. It is the channel through which communication flows, as well as requests to the seers such as mine. Okay, so it's about the history of how the OGT was founded, how this thing happened, this communication actually happened. This communication did not happen in one day, obviously. So some people who tried to communicate with the Kogi and they also knew how to communicate with the outer world tried to be an intermediary between the younger brother and the elder brother. So yeah, when I asked Jose Manuel to describe the heart of the world, he answers with a picture. So the author asked Jose to draw the picture depicting the tribe. So Jose drew a picture. On a sheet of paper, he draws a wobbly pyramid divided into four quarters labeled Kogi, Arhuacos, and the other tribe name, the Kangwama, and the Viva. This is a map of the Sierra, but it's more cosmological than cartographic. So the Jose suggests that the drawing is not merely geographical but also a lot more cultural. Near the summit, he draws four dots connected by the meandering lines to the four different dots at the range's base along the Caribbean coast. He labeled these dots as Izuamas. Okay, so he drew something and he labeled them as Izuamas. Izuamas, he says, are sacred sites. Okay, springs and river mouths connected by a spiritual connect that flows invisibly through and beyond the Sierra. The Spanish word he uses to describe this current Mother Earth's life energy is intocable or untouchable, but its existence is completely real to the Kogi. So, these Iswamas are the source of life to the earth. The role of the Mamos is to guard the Iswamas, so the people safeguard the Iswamas and ensure that they stay healthy, that the life energy flows, so they can make sure that the Iswamas are safe and perennial. But increasingly, as shown in the Herrera's films, the Mamos are connected that the sites are growing sick. Sorry, they are concerned that the sites are growing sick. So they are concerned about the health of those Iswamas. The reason is environmental devastation from the pollution of rivers, the pollution we know about actually. To the extraction of metals and coals, these are not resources in the Kogi size, but the living organs of the Mother Earth's body. So these are the essential, these Iswamas are essential to the earth. If the body of the world grows sick, the heart of the world grows sick. So they are concerned that if the earth is sick, eventually the heart or their world will also be contaminated. Each localized point of damage affects the system as a whole. In a feedback system that is intricately connected, nothing is divisible or form or independent of anything else. So they feel that there's a feedback system. So if the earth or the younger brother is contaminated, so will the people of the Kogis actually. Despite their apparent segregation, ensconced in the land above the clouds, the Kogi have never been isolated, but rather connected to everything in a subtle, intalkable or untouchable ways that outsider cannot see. Okay, understandable. Now the Iswamas are disappearing, the knowledge is disappearing. So they are also concerned that with the disappearance of these Iswamas, the knowledge is also getting out of their hand. Okay. Despite these disappearances, the region is more stable today than it was when Eras first visited. Okay, most of the guerrillas, paramilitaries, and narco traffickers have moved on from that place. The indigenous peoples of the Sierra have jurisdiction over their land, and officials like Jose Manuel, in his traditional white clothes but with a smartphone in his hand, means traditional but yet modern, act as a two-way transmitter conversant with both cultures. Okay, so right now the situation is a lot more safer than it was used to be. We pause while an assistant brings us a cup of Kogi coffee harvested from wild plants in the tropical forest of the foothills. Okay, so they were drinking a cup of coffee. We sip in the silence for a while, and then last Jose Manuel comes to the subject of my visit. So he asked that why he was trying to visit that place. The author was trying to visit that place. Patiently, he explains that I have come at a sensitive time, so he was trying to give explanation that when the author came at a sensitive time, or a mere excuse, I suppose. Growing numbers of younger brothers have been finding their way to Kogi land, and the OGT has decided that restrictions should be tightened. In the past, outsiders have come to the mountains to extract knowledge, removing it from the legitimate owners without their permission. So, the government feels that, or the jurisdiction feels that the younger brothers are exploiting the knowledge of the elder brothers without their permission. So this is a type of theft. Obviously, he says that extracting precious metals or coal is similar to what we are doing right now. In order to receive permission, I would need to write a proposal explaining what knowledge I am seeking to gain and what I intended to do with that knowledge and who I plan to share it with. A decision would be made in the mountains, and the answer could take months. Okay, understandable. Unfortunately, I don't have months, only 3 weeks in Colombia. My request to visit the heart of the world is gently but firmly declined. Okay, so his request was declined eventually, right now. Okay. Back in my hostel in Santa Marta, in the wet heat of Colombian spring, I asked myself why I came and what I wanted to find in the heart of the world. So the author is trying to contemplate what he was here about. So, like others who came before me, I wanted to learn more about the Kogi, how they survived for all this time. So, one of the reasons was to learn about the Kogi tribe. In crude terms, suppose I wanted to understand their secret. Perhaps I also wanted. So there's also one another reason. I also wanted to assuage my ecological grief and fear. So also the author also wanted to destroy his inner fear. In a damaged world that is spiraling ever deeper into catastrophe, who wouldn't desperately want to learn? So author is also giving explanations why he wanted to visit the Kogi tribe for spirituality from some of the people who never forgot how to stay connected to earth, how to live without destroying it, who wouldn't want to be admitted to the world chart. So I have a feeling that the author is also a western ecological activist, probably. Okay, but I also came as a travel writer, so author also came as a traveler. So there are three main reasons why the author came here. First of all, being the curiosity of knowing about the Kogi tribe, and the other reason was he also wanted to learn more about spirituality and how they lived while being connected to earth in such a difficult time while the author is visiting. And the third being that the author is also a travel writer and also looking for a story. So also for his profession, he has come there. I came in search of observation, descriptions, and local colors. So he also came there for a lot of other elements which we can add to his story. Okay. I came looking for material for his story probably, and to take that material home with me to be refined into a product that other people would consume. So he wanted to gain materials also, not materials mean the real world materials. He wanted to gain some knowledge about the tribe and also wanted to include that in his story. Okay, understandable. The Kogi are taking steps that are needed to safeguard the culture. Okay. While foreigners came to this land to extract material wealth, the knowledge of those they invaded was rejected and discarded. At best, that knowledge was seen as useless. At worst, it was evil. Now that the easily extractable resources have been taken, another market is booming in the indigenous wisdom. So, the author is saying that. The first of all, the foreigners were rejected while seeking the knowledge, but right now the indigenous wisdom is a popular thing that people are caring about. Academics and researchers need data. Okay, that's also a cause. Others seek spiritual salvation. Understandable. They come to find knowledge of medicinal plants and roots to a higher consciousness. So yeah, right now people are a lot more concerned about Ayurveda and organic things, and a lot more organic spirituality also. So that's also a rising concern, or a rising cause of visiting and communicating with these tribes. They come to find knowledge of medicinal plants and routes to high consciousness, to learn techniques for reconnecting with nature, to understand different forms of healing and transformation. Given the depth of our appetites, no wonder the Kogi are wary of anyone coming to take something away, even an idea. So yeah, so the Kogi are aware about that, or that we are very greedy and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's a continuation of the previous idea itself. In this context, I am somewhat relieved that my access has been refused. Clearly, the author is also, in some part of his mind, he is also relieved that he is not violating the isolation of the tribe. Clearly, the Kogi are taking the steps that are needed to safeguard their culture. Okay, but before I left the Casa Indigena, clutching my map with its scribbled Ezuamas, Jose Manuel tells me that I am welcome to talk with his brother Simi Gui, who also works with the OGT. He does not live here in Santa Marta, but 80 kilometers further up the coast in the mountains near Palomino, on the outskirts of the Kogi territory. Okay, so the author is allowed to talk with Jose's brother, and he is basically describing on the location. The About the location, sorry. The following day, I am headed east to meet Simigui. So the author wanted to visit his brother, the Jose's brother. For the next week, I stay in a village called Rio Anco, a short motor taxi ride from Palomino, situated on a rocky river that flows from the mountains to the sea. Greenery surrounded, sandy roads are made of mud, and etc. etc. And their windows come the same description. The author is basically describing the place where Simigui, or Jose's brother, lives. My first impressions are brightly painted walls, amplified music, etc. etc. Okay, sorry. This is a settlement of colonos, literally colonists, Colombian farmers who have moved to the region in the past few decades. Okay, so the Colombian farmers lived there where Simigui lives. Much of the original forest has been cleared for crops and grazing land, but a few Viva families live here too. Okay, some of the tribes live here too. The people who first round a footing in both worlds. Okay, and 15 kilometers up the road is Kogi village of Tungueca. Rio Anco is also home to several foreigners, including gringas in like Nina Dalgli. So the author is describing the anthropological situation in the place. Dahlgren is a Dane who has lived here for decades. So this Dahlgren is a person, probably having fallen for a Colombian man. So not a person, she is a woman. Colombian man when she was traveling. Her house is airy with a wide veranda and a garden containing tropical flowers, banana trees, and coca plants whose leaves, when chewed or steeped in tea, are a medicine and stimulant. Okay, description. Next door is a family of evangelical Christians who sing joyous hymns, and a parrot who that shouts "Hola" in a cracked voice. Okay, Darwin rents me two adjoining rooms with a mosquito-netted bed and a tin roof that thunders when it rains. Okay, so that this is a basic description of the place where the author is staying in. From her, I learned that Rio Anko is safe because only one paramilitary group is active in this region now. They have a base somewhere in the hills, but also live openly in the village. And every motor taxi driver, hotel owner, property developer must pay them protection money. Okay, so they are like means unofficial politicians who take money from the normal people and provide them with ample amount of protection. Okay, safe in Colombia is very much a relative term. On the highway that runs to Palomino, she points to a spot where a body was dumped just a couple of months ago. Someone who didn't pay his dues. Okay, so a person who did not pay these people was murdered. Okay, sometimes that's a scale thing. Sometimes there are irregular targeted killings by vigilante groups. Two friends of hers, a husband and wife, who were campaigning for land reform, were shot dead several years ago as a payback for their activism. Okay, so activists are also being killed there. In Colombia, environmental defenders and land activists, many of whom are indigenous, are murdered at one of the highest rates in the world. Okay, that's also a scary thing. in Colombia. Uh, Tungueca, the indigenous village on the periphery of the heart, is a 2 hour walk away. Kogi people from the village are often seen distinctive in their white clothes buying supplies in Rio Anco's bodegas, maybe shops, leading mules back up the mountain or taking rides on the motor taxis, their long hair flying behind them. Darlene says that in the past few years, some they have bought their own motorbikes. Living in the close proximity to their younger brothers, unlike their cousins higher up in the mountains, these Kogi are becoming civilized. At least that is the term that the local colonists use. When I arrived in Yuanko, I assumed that the incomers, whether peasants, farmers, or foreigners, were encroaching on Tungueca and intruding on Tungueca and eroding the boundaries of the Kogi land. But the truth is more surprising. So there's quite a bit of connection between the Kogi and the people who lived in Rio Anko, and the author is describing what's happening through the experiences of that woman. I don't remember her name. So yeah, we will move forward with it. Far from being an accident settlement whose long isolation is under a threat, Tungueka is only 15 years old. Okay, there's a village, another Kogi village. Okay, so another one nearby was established only in the past 5 years. During the past decade, an area around both villages has been reallocated as indigenous land, but like everything in Colombia, the situation is complicated. Okay, land in this region was originally granted by the state to poor farmers, by many of whom then sold it to foreigners for a higher price, as usual. Okay, when which means that the reallocation of land back to its traditional owners is not without a dispute. Okay, got it. But the result is that, seemingly against all odds, the Kogi are moving back down the mountains to resettle ancestral lands, effectively expanding their territory for the first time in 5 centuries. So, the in the current situation, the Kogi are expanding their land, and that's a new thing that the author is observing, and that's also a new thing in the past 50 years. Tungueka consists of 100 conical huts and with mud walls and thatched roofs clustered around larger construction called a nuhue, a sacred ritual gathering place for only Kogi men, women understood as being intrinsically closer to Mother Earth. Okay. Tungueka, I have learned, is an open village that accepts visitors and which seems to function as a cultural interlude. Okay, so this village accepts foreigners or visitors who come to their place. Just as the Kogi visit Rio and go to buy products that are useful to them, Colombian and foreign tourists are allowed to Tongueca. Okay, there is a small entrance fee, and a Kogi guide gives a tour. Toddlers reach out pudgy hands for biscuits, and women accepts bag of rice, both of which visitors are advised to bring as offerings. Okay, so they allow people to come in their place, and they also accept gifts and presents. In the Elder Brothers' warning, Elder describes Kogi culture as one of the silence and secrecy. Okay, so the culture is very silent and also very secret. They do not want to share their knowledge with the outer world or younger brother. Communication with the outside world is a taboo. Okay, so they prohibited themselves from speaking about their knowledge to the younger brothers, which they consider them to be. He writes, children are taught to hide from strangers, and adults regard all the outsiders as dangerous. Okay, clearly things have changed in the past 14 years since a book was published, or at least they have here on the outskirts of the Sierra. Okay, so a lot of things has changed. The author is suggesting that the Kogi adults who visit Rio Anko seem to be on friendly or neutral terms with the local colonels. Okay, so they are on friendly terms, and they are like locals only, whom children see as a source of biscuits. Okay, those children are greedy for biscuits, and they actually intermix with the colonos, I suppose. Yeah. Many aspects of my visit make me uncomfortable, especially the distribution of the gifts. Okay, so the author is not particularly happy about the distribution of gifts with my colonial power dynamic implicit in this exchange. So the author is particularly unhappy about the fact that they have to give gifts, and the local people are accepting that, or the Kogi tribe people are accepting it there, because let's say in the pre-colonial era, the colonial powers such as Britain and France, they used gifts and or rather presents to please the kings and the rulers of the place they wanted to colonize. So the author is thinking of that dynamic here. It turns me into another tourist gawking at the life of authentic indigenous village, and people going about their day washing clothes, preparing food. Quite understandable. But the Kogi of this region on the border of a re-expanding domain also seem to exercise a high degree of control. Entrance is at their discretion. Going further up in the mountain is banned. Behind the huts, the foothills rise abruptly in an imposing wall, so they are very conservative about their culture and their place. So they do not allow everyone to enter their place, and they do not want to let foreigners cause a hindrance in their lifestyle. Okay, so I think you have understood what I want to say. Okay, imposing wall dense with jungle and veiled by cloud. Okay, the beginning of the guarded Sierra is that is firmly close to me. Against that backdrop, Tungveka appears less like a village under siege and more like a outpost in a decolonized land. Okay, so it appears less like a village, and it appears more like a decolonized land, which I should say that it was colonized previously, but now inhabitants are living there. Okay, so it's quite understandable what the author is trying to say. A hair rising motor taxi ride brings me to Palomino, 12 kilometers to the west, for my appointment with Jose Manuel's brother Simigui. Palomino, like Rio Anco, takes its name from a river. The river takes its name from Rodrigo Alvarez Palomino, a Spanish explorer who drowned in its rapids in the early 16th century after helping the De Bastidas establish Santa Marta. Okay, so the author is talking about a man or a woman who, probably a man, a Spanish explorer who drowned in a river, and the place is named after him. To the Kogi, the river called Wazenkaka is sacred. Palomino, the colonial village that grew up at its mouth, so the location is being described here by the author, had until recently a violent, sleazy reputation as a battleground for armed groups. So it has a bad reputation among the people living in there. So yeah, though the violence has diminished, thus laziness remains. So previously it was a violent place, but right now, since it was colonized, but right now it's quite a normal place. But the sleaziness or the bad reputation is still there. Today, the village has been reinvented as a backpacker tourist resort. So, the village is not like what it used to be, but right now it's filled with tourists and foreigners who want to know more about the place or just want to visit there. Squeezed between a highway and a white sand beach, so the author is again describing the location. There are hostels and thatched beach bars, ambient techno music thumping from the behind bamboo walls, and the tropical air smells of sewerage and marijuana. Posters advertise full moon parties, DJ sets, and magic mushrooms. Okay, so the author is also talking about the culture. It's more narcotic than you have ever seen. So yeah, the author is just describing about that, as well as indigenous tours to Tangweka. Okay, experience the untouched culture of the Kogi. Says one. Pierced and tattoo foreigners browse shops that sell ethnic souvenirs, and the whole place has an atmosphere for lazy indulgence. So yeah, let's move on to the next paragraph. I meet Simigui in a cafe garden shaded by banana trees. He has traveled down the Sierra for a couple of hours to be here. In his bright white clothes and tall straw hat, he is instantly recognizable. His lips are green from chewing coca leaves, and in his hand the popolo used by all Kogi men, some narcotic substance, I guess. A sacred gourd containing burnt seashells, the lime of which combines with the coca to amplify the narcotic effect. Oh, yeah, suspected in the correct way. Its application is believed to foster harmony with the Mother Earth, so contains a symbolic meaning as well. Using a stick, he brings the powder to his mouth and wipes the excess on the god, which is coated with the residue from many years of use. Okay, so he has been using that thing, that poporo, for a long time. Like the white hats worn by mammoths and the conical roofs of the huts, this thick pale yellow crust represents the Sierra snows. Okay, so this also contains a symbolic meaning. The color. Sorry. Throughout our conversation, he chews small bitter leaves as naturally as he blinks and breathes. So it's a part of their life, as the author is suggesting. While his brother spoke of how the heart of the world is being constricted, Simui speaks of the ways in which it is also expanding. So, as Jose told that the world of the Kogi tribe, uh, sorry, the Kogi tribe. The Kogi tribe is being constricted. The Simui speaks something different than what his brother is saying. So, yeah, let's continue reading. Sorry. Recovery comes from the sea, he says. Ever since Spanish invasion severed access to the coast, the Kogi have been cut off from some of the most sacred places. They have kept a connection to the sea by ingesting the lime of shells, but sourcing these shells and transporting them back to the mountains was often dangerous. In 2013, with the backing of the Colombian government and international charities, the tribe raised enough money to buy back a silver of coastline. So yeah, with the help of the Colombian government and with the help of the government and all the endorsement, the tribe was able to restore some of its natural inheritances. The sacred site of Jaba Tanis or something, 32 kilometers is some place. 32 kilometers east of Palomino was formerly a degraded wasteland covered in tons of plastic trash. After a decade of restoration, mangrove forests have been replanted and fish, caiman, crabs and capybara have returned. The Ezuama at the mouth of the Jerez River is under a mammoth protection again. Okay, so previously, this Ezuamas and the natural habitat has been disrupted by humankind. But after the backing of government and endorsements, also the support of some charities, the tribe was able to regain its property or something they wanted to take care of. And right now, the ecology have returned to its place. That's what the author is saying, or rather, the brother is saying, the Simugi. Simigui tells me of the linea negra that is central to Kogi thought. Like many things in the Kogi world, this black line or this separation can be understood both physically and intangibly. Tangibly means something which is real. Intangibly means probably the opposite of that. In one sense, it's a line on a map, a border that skirts the base of Sierra, demarcating the traditional boundary of the indigenous island lands. Just like a border, the author is saying that this black line or the linea negra is a border. In 2018, this was used as a basis for the Black Line Decree, in which the Colombian government gave formal recognition to the ancestral territories of the Kogi, the Viva, and the other tribes. But in another another intouchable sense, the Black Line is spiritual. Okay, so along with the physical existence um, and the validity of the government, there is also a spiritual meaning which the Kogi tribe believes in. Okay, let's read about it. It binds together sacred sites on the periphery of the heart Iswama, such as the one at that place, to ensure the continued flow of life energy between them. So, as I've understood that instead of considering that linea negra as a border or a separation, the Kogi tribe believes it is a connection between the outer world and them, and it also pushes life into the outer world. So it also bears a spiritual significance in them. Okay, so understood. To this explanation, Simgui adds a further layer of meaning. A black line, as he says, can be understood not only as a border and a link between social sacred site, but metaphorically as a connective thread reaching beyond the Sierra to other points in the world, Europe, Africa, Asia. So it's expanding not only the Colombian country, it's also expanding itself to other countries as well, or the world as a bigger picture. He conjures an image of the mountains as a node of web, as a node in a web of connections that stretches between distant ecosystems and places of spiritual energy across the planet. The Sierra is the heart of the world, says he says, but she has arms. Okay, understood it. This is a quite a vague paragraph, but I think we have understood that there is a place where there is nature and which is the heart of the world, and there is also the outer world, and the outer world is not just within Colombia but outside of it as well. In this sense, the violence of colonialism did not just break the line around Kogi territory, but also means the colonialism did not violate the Kogi beliefs, but also did something else. Let's read about it. But a more fundamental connection that once joined all things to all things. Okay, by reconnecting the mountains with the sea to maintain contiguous ecosystems between glacier, highland, mountain forest, etc. The Kogi have taken on the task of weaving the threads back together. So the Kogi tribe started restoring these boundaries, and they started respecting it. They started reviving it. That task clearly is immense. The damage is still being done. Perhaps the most urgent signs of this are glaciers on the mountaintop. So the glaciers are still under the human destruction. The eternal snows that are represented everywhere in the Kogi culture, from huts to the yellow encrusted gourd in Simugui sand, to they are rapidly melting, causing landslide, droughts, etc. The scientific view attributes to the climate change reducible to the parts per million of carbon dioxide. So there are scientific reasons and pollution behind that glacier melting. But let's see what happens next. But Simigui's explanation turns this framing on its head. So Simigui thinks that there's something else than the scientific explanation. So yeah, the sacred places are not sick because of distant climate change. Okay, so the sacred places are not affected by the climate change. Rather, the climate change is occurring because the sacred places are sick. So there's a metaphorical or symbolic meaning behind it. The Jwamas have having been neglected, abused for too many years. So because of the colonization, the Iguamas have been treated with a lot of negligency, and they have been abused for many years. So that's why they are sick, and they are not affected by the climate change. Rather, they are sick and they are tired of what the humans have done to them. This explains the deeper importance of reclaiming ancestral lands. The damage is physical, but the restoration must be spiritual. Okay, so that's quite understandable. To the Kogi, saving the world begins exactly here. But Shimigu says mammals can't help Mother Earth recover their own. There must be dialogue between elder and younger brothers, reciprocity, understanding, balance, harmony, etc. So that's why the Kogis are trying to connect with the outer world. So that makes sense right now. After we shake hands at the end, he takes one of the cactus fiber bags from around his neck, and a few stray coca leaves flutter down as he enters the house. Regalo. Sorry for my pronunciation, but yeah, that's what it is. He says, a gift. Then we walk back to the street and go to our separate ways. As right now, I've understood that the passage is about spirituality versus the scientific things in the planet Earth, and how and it's also about the Kogi tribe, and because this main theme revolves around the beliefs of the Kogi tribes, and also what the humans think about it. Yeah, so let's continue reading. After we shake hands, yeah, I've already read this. After our meeting, I follow a winding way from the tourist trap. So the author is returning to where he came from. I have no destination in mind, no mountain to ascend. Soon the jungle envelops me, a living mass of fern-covered trunks, palms, vines, etc. Okay, the canopy whoops, whirs and wails. Leaf cutter ants march everywhere. At every turn, I scatter clouds of iridescent blue butterflies. Okay, so the author is describing about the place and the ecology of the path from where he is returning to, from where he came from. Sorry, I have used too many from in this sentence. I have never been anywhere so astonishingly alive. Okay, so the author is saying, feeling that he is alive, and he is also cherishing the nature. In the jungle, the path traces the contour of steep slopes, drop down the wide green river, and steeply climbs up again. I pass a mamo with his poporo, a barefoot woman with a wrinkled face, and a young girl who is weaving a bag with white thread as she walks. So the author encounters two people, women, one of them being a girl. I also pass a party of tourists carrying a giant inflatable tube. So he also comes across a group of tourists. They'll use them to drift down the green river in a leisurely flotilla, pumping out music and drinking beer. So they will do their thing. Okay. Toward the sacred Iswama at this month. So the author is being a little bit sarcastic here. To the Kogi, Herrera writes, the end of the world will come when Columbus reaches his final goal, penetrating the heart of the world and plunging the environment into chaos. The snow will melt on its peaks, the waters will dry up, the balance of nature will be overthrown. So the author is saying that Columbus reaches his final goal, so everything will come to an end. That's what he is suggesting in this paragraph. The balance of nature will be overthrown, so nature will end in someday. So the author realizes that the we are driving the nature into the end. So yeah, that's what he's saying. After an hour comes a break in the canopy ahead. There are distant plots of maize cooking, smoke arising from conical roofs. Above soar the summits of Sierra, so close that yet unreachable. At first, I think that I am seeing cloud in whiteness of their peaks in this dripping heat. It takes some time to recognize it as snow. So the author is seeing and he is contemplating what he is seeing. This is as close as I will come to the heart of the world. So the author is regretting or not feeling good about the fact that he cannot go into the heart of the world. There are some places we cannot go, some things are not ours to know. After centuries of exploration, colonization, etc., perhaps we are entering a time when travelers must recognize the extractive impulses that drives us forward. Okay, the author is realizing that nothing bad happened actually because he is not violating that their isolation, the tribe's isolation, and he is not actually destroying or exploiting the resources they have created for us. But as I leave, retracing the path through the jungle back towards Palomino, yeah, and from there to Santa Marta, my flight to home to England. Okay, so the author lives at England, or the author is English probably. I don't know. It seems that something else is traveling with me as I walk. I am struck by the image of the sacred landscape behind me, expanding its threads being rewoven by Kogi hands, refilling the space that was left when the meteor hit. Okay, so the author is taking back the knowledge which he has gained, sorry, and then he is realizing that we need to take care of our nature and we need to restore it, and we also need to respect the isolation of certain tribes because they are the one who are keeping the earth alive for us. So yeah, I think that was about the essay. So yeah, so see you in the next one. Bye.